And they had no context for it then. And I told them, I said, well, the men in the red hats, now they're calling them hats, you know these aren't hats, you know, the head coverings, but were originally in the east. I'm sorry, right, in the east, and then come to the west. That's us.
It's come to fruition.
Right. So, and in the last chapter of the Moorish Quran, it talks about the end times and the fulfilling of the prophecies. That great and awful day that's sure to come.
Yes.
Great and awful. Great meaning ultimately it's going to be for the greater good. Awful meaning it's going to be awe-inspiring and there's going to be a lot of chaos. But that's essentially why that's why any prophet comes. To try to inform people or warn people about what's going to happen if they don't get their act together. In this case, get your act together by knowing who you are and acting as nobles. Don't worry about other people in terms of whether they do it or not. You and I like what you said earlier, brother, and I think Brother Tallahassee was affirming the same thing. I'm not interested in somebody showing me the way.
Telling me.
Because even Prophet Nubudrali said, you can take a block and point it and that can show people the way somewhere. You show people the way by doing your best to live it.
Yeah.
By setting an example.
Yeah.
Love, truth, it's not hard. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. How complicated is that? What's that?
Well, we can let the secret out.
A last night inside joke on the 5 principles.
Yeah. But yeah, so what happened is, the Sheik asked me to do a virtual Philly tour. So I'm like, all right. Yo, man, Philly is so heavily loaded. Right? The history there is just, it's so much. You know, you went to school there, right? So putting things together, and then me and her had a conversation last week. And she said, yeah, you know, these 5 principles, people talk about them, but they don't be about them. And then we had a conversation about it, and she was like, you need to do a class on that. So I was like, all right, so I intended on doing it in Philly next week, right? And then I was like, sitting here still battling the principles, Philly tour, principles, Philly tour. We got to hit these principles, right? And then we talk about it last night. And then what does he sit right here next to me and say? Right?
That's Allah.
So that's what I said last night. I said either that's Allah saying do this, the ancestors saying no, we need you to talk to them about this. We need you to understand it. Or even they spoke through her to me, but one way or the other.
It came out.
Right? So yeah, that's what we're doing tomorrow.
Yeah.
See, there are no happenings, welcomings all
That's
For
right.
real.
So,
So I just
No, you finish.
I was just going to say that to me, that's what the beauty is of them. Two things I think that stand out in terms of the beauty of Moorish science, or the significance of being a Moorish Moslem, if you will. One, we recognize that you can break down what it is to be in your higher self by pointing out those 5 principles. If someone says, what is it to be a good woman or a good man? It means you adhere to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. My late Uncle Johnny used to say all the time, follow everything in that order. Meaning you can't get to truth until you've gone through love. You can't get to justice or peace until you've gone through love. Love is always first. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So just the process, in terms of how the prophet laid it out, is telling us that that's key. Other thing is, we honor all divine prophets. So we can see value and beauty in all nationalities and their prophets.
Yes.
So we can sit down with a Confucius.
Yes.
We can sit down with a Buddhist. We can sit down with a Taoist. We can sit down with a Christian. We can sit down with a Jew. Any of those people that adhere to those basic principles and see value in what they're saying.
Yes, absolutely.
And for me, we've lost that. That's the problem of being too dogmatic. There was a joke, in fact, I saw a bumper one time and said, my karma ran over my dogma. My karma ran over my dogma.
Interesting.
And the idea of trying to get past dogma and stick to principles. Because the principles are that which essentially guide you. When you look at and I've talked about this and I'll talk about this a little bit too tomorrow. One of the criticisms of the Marabouts in the old Moorish Empire on the continent known today as Africa was that they were seen as being too provincial. their focus was too much on provincial locations. They didn't focus enough on the center being Mecca and all things coming in from the Arab East. The fact is, they honored those things, but they said, look, we have local
Problems.
problems,
Or
right?
Issues.
Local issues, local sages,
Right.
local
Customs.
Muslims or Moslems who are doing great things here who need to be honored and revered.
Right.
We're constantly looking to some place else when we can find our pearls
Yes.
right here.
That's right.
So when people would say things like, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, wait a minute, a prophet comes to his own people. We needed a prophet, someone who was going to bring something unique. It's not going to look like
Everybody
Sunni
else's.
Islam.
Yeah.
And of course, and I'll say one thing quickly, brother. What essentially has taken over now in terms of the public mind, I'm speaking generally, when they think about what it is to be a Muslim or Islam, they now see Muslims as ISIS or ISIL.
Right.
Yeah.
Their whole construction of what it is to be a Muslim is based upon the perversion
Yes.
of a Wahhabist interpretation coming from the Saudis. So you have Muslims now who are afraid to declare, in some cases, or let people know they're
That
Muslims
they're Muslim, yeah.
because
Because
of
of
the
that
fact,
perception.
right?
Yeah,
Because of the
yeah.
perception in the West, whereas the Moorish science understanding of Islam or Islamism is saying right up front, look, we honor all divine prophets, and our emphasis is on love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We can lay it out for you. When I hear a Christian tell me, well, problem with Muslims, you don't know anything about love, it's all about submission. So, well, no, that's a particular interpretation.
Interpretation.
It's not my understanding of
Right.
Islam
Exactly.
and its source.
Exactly.
And, we focus as our primary prophet in terms of what's laid out in the Moorish Quran is Jesus. Why Jesus and not Muhammad? Right? So Muslims, well, because Jesus is seen to be more reflective of this focus on service to humanity and love.
Right.
Not that Muhammad, and peace be upon him, and all the prophets
Right.
wasn't about service to humanity. But we're also recognize that Jesus did something unique. And even in Al-Islam, they say that he's coming back in the end
Right.
to judge essentially with
Right.
with God or with Allah. So, I think we're in a very powerful position in terms of the Moorish community, particularly as we get ourselves together, right? To be able to set an example, because people start to look at Islam completely different when they talking to this sister or this brother who were they were Moorish Muslims, and they were talking about love. They were even talking about Jesus, right?
So you have to go, and then I want to.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say, well, you're saying Muslim and Moslem. For people that might not know, that might be in this room, what is a Muslim?
Muslim is actually, I make that distinction because Muslim is a term that Drew Ali used. It's said to be an older version of a Farsi word for believer. So its origins, is, etymologically, it's just related more to a Farsi, which is Persian origin, which has connections to Akkadian, which has connections to the Canaanites.
Okay.
Did you want to?
And side note, they used to call Canada Acadia.
It's still referenced in the East
Yeah.
Coast.
And he's called
There's
the university.
There's even a
Acadia,
university.
oh yeah,
called
Acadia University, right.
Oh, what?
Some people.
Arcadia, A-R, I'm sorry.
When you okay.
I was just going to say,
I think it's Acadia.
Arcadia.
A-C or
Right. I'm
A-C-A-I.
Oh, you speak AKK.
A-K-K-A-D,
Okay,
Akkad, which
okay.
was the name of a civilization in the region between the Tigris and Euphrates and has connections to Nile Valley civilization, the Akkadians.
Some you might look at Muslims and Muslim somewhat like this. We call ourselves Muslims, right? And vowels are interchangeable. The O, the U,
Yes.
the I, the E.
That's right.
You can look at Muslims as the will of Allah, right? And people who call themselves today Muslims, those who submit to the will of Allah. See, it's a difference. We are the will of Allah. We are Allah's people.
Yes.
Where they're caught into doctrine, and to belief.
I believe. Yeah.
We don't survive off of belief.
Well, that's yes. Thank you.
Right? Like I don't believe you're sitting there. I know you are. I don't have to believe he's here. I'm touching him. So it's a difference in knowing and belief, right? So where you got Muslims who know, right, who they are, who know who the Creator is, and we are the will of that Creator. We
Yes.
are that. Where you got Muslims who follow doctrine and just believe, and they submit to the will of the belief.
This is the forefront of any conversation I have here in my house with family. Oh, tell me more. Tell me more. Okay, well, how about I just ask you some questions and you tell me? And the reference to any question, the response, don't answer the question. The response is always based on belief. I say, no, that's what you believe. Now let's talk about what you know, yeah? And even they can tell you. But first, well, I was told in school, well, no. Okay, so you believe what you were told, right? That's a belief. You know, and you always have to break it, I always have to break it down. But that belief system is so strong that it interrupts.
You're exactly right.
It interrupts your instinct, it interrupts your intuition, it interrupts all your natural senses. So now you can even see it, and if you believe something else, you'll deny what you see. It's that strong.
Yeah.
And this is what we're dealing with. You know,
Well, so I was just wanting to get back to where this started from in the beginning when you were talking about your mother, and then tie this into what you were talking about with the Christianity and people sort of not professing, but sort of giving back Christianity, let's say, and renouncing the Christianity. What I realized is that what we are observing is an attack on Islam.
yes.
And that whole way of life. That's what we are experiencing. Christianity is on the decline because it was never what it was supposed to be. It's what they are using as the tool, and that tool through the universal time has come to an end. And it's like you're sort of relying on something that no longer you can rely on. You're in trouble now because you've based everything on that, and that's what makes reference in the Quran about building it on sand. They're in trouble. So what they've had to do is they've had to now take this attack to the mind now, because the mind is everything. So they got all of us now. You can't mention Islam or Muslim or anything without someone having factored something else into it. So that's the
Like
next
ISIS.
level. But what you realize is that was an attack that these are their master seers, understanding that it was over when the prophet came. The prophet came to start that, right? It was like he chopped it down and now it's falling. So what's happened is as the timelines have increased and now as the astrological signs and the planets have come into our power structure, they've had to amp up their game.
Yes.
And that's what this is about, right? Because I was thinking about this. Are we not like the Israelis and the Palestinians? Aren't we like really the Palestinians? If you think about this, right? We have had a force come in, take over our land, calling it something else, and we're now living with them in a certain extent. But how does the Palestinian walking down the road, because when you hear the news, you see all of these attacks and bombings. That's not happening here, but it's happening there. But it really is the same thing that's really going on.
When
Right?
Israel never
So
gave you an
then
existence.
now I'm rewinding back to what he was talking about, which is what we're dealing with is people understanding that something's wrong. They know in their hearts something is wrong. They are refusing to identify with the very thing that is wrong, and they're finding everything else to do.